So the next session is on a spectrum roadmap for the future. And may I invite our distinguished chairperson for this session, Shri Gulab Chand, Joint Wireless Advisor, WPC. Let's put our hands together to welcome sir. Also inviting our eminent speakers for this session. For the keynote presentations, we have with us today Shri Parag Kar. He is the Vice President, Government Affairs, India and South Asia, Qualcomm. Very warm, and we will have question and answers in the end if the time permits. And our session chair, Shri Gulab Chand ji, is going to give the opening remarks on delivering a spectrum strategy and roadmap for India. And with those words, I hand over to you, sir, for your opening remarks and to kindly carry forward the proceedings of the session. Over to you, sir.
Spectrum strategy and roadmap for India. So first of all, I would like to greet the audience, among whom are present my senior superiors such as Dr. S.M. Sharma, Sri R.P. Agrawal, and Mr. R.N. Agrawal, who is the kind of very famous person in the, not only here in India, but in ITU also. So whenever we visit ITU, people talk about Dr. R.N. Agrawal invariably. So he has got very few of the colleagues who have grown old, but they still continue to participate in ITU. So we feel very kind of proud of having been mentored under the guidance of such great people, basically. So wherever Dr. R.N. Agrawal is there, sir, thank you, sir, for being our senior. So without wasting further time, I would like to kind of introduce my panel of speakers. But before that, like everybody does, I have got this opportunity to kind of market my department, basically. So everyone talks about my company is this, my company is that, so I got this opportunity. So let me also speak. So I think it's a kind of well-known fact that elements such as kind of a clear regulatory policy, ease of doing business, and good investment are the key pillars of success of any sector, not only the telecom sector. And in the telecom sector, Department of Telecommunication has taken a slew of reforms in the recent times, of which the ease of doing business has been kind of major thing which has happened in the department. And I mention this because WPC was kind of infamous for not being so people friendly or user friendly. So in the last year, you might have seen a lot of transformation in WPC. So you might have, if you have felt ease of doing business, kindly clap for us. Thank you, thanks a lot. And everyone in my department doesn't lose the opportunity of talking about or going gung-ho on the successful completion of the auction. So I am very proud that I was the nodal person in the entire process. And my day was made when Dr. Sunil Bharti Mittal, it was all flooded over the social media that with this, like we were able to provide the frequency earmarking letter on the day of payment itself within few hours. And he was so glad that he came out all praise for us. And he didn't mince the word. He said, if we have this kind of ease of doing business, then I have no doubt that India can be catapulted into the league of advanced nation within no time. So that made my day, basically, because I was a nodal person. So in one of the WhatsApp group, I said, guys, give me some credit also. So I was the person under whom this frequency earmarking, not only earmarking, the entire foundation for the auction has happened. So my day would have been made had he mentioned the name of Gulab Chand. I'm joking. So without wasting further time, I would like to introduce my panel of speakers. The first speaker would be Mr. Parag Agrawal, and I now give the floor to him to speak about developing a blueprint for effective spectrum prices and mechanism. So he is going to speak on a very important subject because it is not only the quantum of spectrum which is made available for the TSPs through auction, which is happening through market process, but it is the price which matters. If the price is not right, it will not be picked up by the stakeholders or the TSPs. So my dear friend is going to speak on this very important topic. Mr. Agarwal, Mr. Parakar, sorry. Mr. Parakar, the floor is yours, please.
Where is the presentation? Is there? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I think, okay. The presentation that I am basically going to make, as Gulab Chandji basically mentioned that pricing, I kind of think that since a lot of water has already flown under that bridge, we had auction starting from 2010 and almost like 10 years have passed, we have auction. Now we are discussing pricing. So I don't know, whether it kind of will resonate well with the audience. I'm going to basically talk of something more fundamental here. I'm not going to bring too much data. My presentation does not have data in it because my plan is to talk about something more fundamental about pricing. Whatever we are doing today as a model, as a pricing model on spectrum for calculating reserve price, are we following some principles or not? So we want to ask those basic questions today. I don't know whether it is going to basically make any difference at all, but I'm still going to make a try, just to have an open mind and have a very, honest discussion. That's the whole purpose of this talk. Okay. So when you talk about pricing, what basically it means? There are two different terminologies here, right? So I'm going to point out to two different terminologies. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, actually. Can you help me with this? Go back to the previous slide.
Back is hard place.
As a back is hard place. Okay. Then you press this, and then where the pointer? Pointer is this. Okay. So there are two different terminologies here: valuation and price. Now, in the whole process of auction, you always will encounter these two terms: valuation and price. Price is always at the time when the bidding takes place, because at that particular point of time, the auctioneer will host the auction and the bidders will bid for the spectrum at a particular price. So that's the price which is called market determined price. But before that process starts, we have a term called valuation. So this particular term, oh my God, I'm sorry. I have to get used to this pointer. Just a minute. Sorry, I am with my apologies.
Be patient.
I know. I am a little. Okay. So these are the two terms. Oh, sorry. Can I have it on? Okay. Yeah. So this is valuation and this is pricing. So valuation is the part which basically comes before the auction. So here the government gets involved. So TRAI and DOT. So what they do, what TRAI does, it basically comes out with a reserve price, right? So this term, valuation, is pre-auction. And then whatever prices that emanates out of the auction is the market determined price. Now what I basically want to focus in this particular chart is, what is valuation? Let's understand what is valuation. So this is the definition of the CVB Institute, quite premium institute, what a reputed institute. So what they say, that this is defined as the highest amount of cash which a business would change hands between a willing and an able buyer and seller in an open, unrestricted market when neither is forced to buy or sell. and both parties have a reasonable knowledge of facts. Now, this is very important. Open and unrestricted market, neither party is forced to buy or sell, and both parties have reasonable knowledge of facts. So these are the terms which are very, very important. Now, you might have all seen the auctions, right? I don't have to basically say anything about that. You will find that most of the auctions, these principles do not hold good. Because we have seen the 2014 auction, renewal auction, 2015 auction, renewal auction, and then there have been a lot of issues. Market operators have made investments. They have to take the spectrum. There is no question of not willing to buy or sell. There is no decision that they can make at that particular point of time. So they take a decision based on a constraint which is already set on the table. So they really don't have an option, right? So therefore, when we do valuation, we cannot basically link to the auction price. That's the point which I'm basically trying to say here. Because auction price is completely independent. This is a price. Price is what you pay and the value is what you get, right? So therefore, it is important that valuations is treated differently and the price is treated differently, and the price emanates mainly from demand and supply. So that's what the economic principles which anchors the overall auction process, right? Now let's go to the next chart. So why is price so different from value? This is a very important question. Why is price so different from value? In our cases, in most of the auction we see, the price is same as value. Because reserve price, most of the spectrum is actually taken on reserve price. There are reasons why the buyers are willing to pay more. We know that. There are strategic reasons. They want to leverage their existing assets. There are emotional reasons and the demand and supply. 2010 auction, for example, it's a demand and supply issue. That's why the price went almost 5 to 6 times that the reserve price. We all know that, right? We had some 15, 16 players on the table because of government decided to give new licenses. They had already taken, they had already paid money, and there was no way that they would have left the 3G spectrum because their money that they have put on the table would actually, the valuation of that entity would go down. So there were no other option for them than not to participate in the 3G auction and bid for the spectrum. So they bid for the spectrum and raised the price, whatever the valuation which the government decided at that particular point of time, which was 3,500 crore for 5 megahertz, that was raised to 16,500 crore. So if you do a dollar valuation, then only you'll come to know the real value. Rupee terms, it actually appears to be too less. It's almost 22 years from now, 12 years from now, right? So therefore, if you do a dollar valuation, then you come to know that how exorbitant that value was at that particular point of time. So what happened was at that particular point of time that these are the things which differentiate price from value, and the market leaders are willing to pay a higher price for bottleneck resources. And that what happens is that high prices for asset becomes an opportunity than a bane. It gives leverage to capture the market and drive a competitive edge and raise the barrier for others to enter the market. Because as the price increases, there will be no other player will be willing to invest, because it becomes very difficult. When operators are already invested in the market, they have so much stake on ground, there is no way anybody can enter and challenge them. So let's go. So this is the experience which I was talking about. 2010, 2014, 2015, we all know, we have been in this industry. There is nothing that I need to basically show in the slides to describe the data, right? We all know what happened in 2014. And here, these 3 years I pointed out clearly because these were the year. This 2010 set the reference price for spectrum. 2014 raised the reference price of spectrum exponentially high because of the renewal auction, and 2015 perpetuated it. And then after that, you might have seen that all the spectrum was taken at reserve price and spectrum was left unsold. Huge quantum of spectrum was left unsold in 2016, 2021, and 2021-22 was a little different because it was a 5G auction. So these 3 years laid the reference price for spectrum, and those were pointed back by the regulator to set the reserve price for 2016, 2021 and 2022, and that is the reason why our pricing is so high, right? So we need to understand that. So most valuation was based on past auction price, so we all know this. I need not read this. The telecom market, so this was the result of this action. Telecom market shrank from 14 players to just 3 players. It's now almost like 2.5 players now, because the third player really doesn't have the huge financial strength. The remaining players are heavily levered. You have a huge amount of debt. If you look at the government, the amount of debt that they owe to the government, like if you see Bharti almost has a debt to EBITDA of 3.6, right? And if you consider the Reliance also standalone, the Jio business almost like more than 4. And Vodafone Idea, I really don't want to say anything. It's very, very high. So the government leverage has decreased significantly because of this. So now, because there are only 3 players in the market, actually only 2 is financially viable. So if they put out spectrum for auction at this particular point of time, with no other player willing to bid in the market, how the value of that particular resource can be monetized? It has become very difficult now. That's the reality. We have to live with that reality. Now, what approach should have been followed? And this is very important to understand that. So whenever we are coming out with an auction design, we need to trigger some incentive, trigger certain action point to drive certain kind of behavior. It's important because you design the auction in such a manner, the behavior will be driven by what your design model is. Which means that if you decide to drive an auction in such a way that prices of the future auctions are always going to be higher than what the auction price is set today, the reserve price is set today, then you will always find that the operators will bid as if there is no tomorrow. Because they know that if they don't take the spectrum now, once the next round of auction happens, the prices will increase by 10 to 12%. So they will bid. So then you will find that the other weaker players in the market will always find themselves very constrained because the market is made up of different types of players. Every player will not have the financial muscle, but every player is important in the market because the presence of all kinds of players in the market drives consumer interest. You cannot have a market led only by market leaders with financial strength. You have to have the weaker player, we have to have the mid player. Everybody plays a very important role in the market because that way the balance is maintained. It's like a diverse ecosystem. Everybody cannot be, superstar in the market. We are basically living in a community where different types of people exist and everybody adds value. Right? Similarly, different types of operators exist in the market and everybody will add value. So you cannot design an auction only for the market leaders. The auction always have to be designed for the weaker player in the market and so that he has an opportunity to play in the market. If he doesn't have an opportunity to play in the market, then the market will become lesser competitive as the time progresses. That has happened in the Indian market and that's a fact. We should face this particular fact. Today we have only 2.5 players only because of this reason. The spectrum prices have become so high that there is no way that people can enter the market. So that is why you set the auction rule in such a way that the player who is participating in the auction should know that if he takes spectrum at the higher price, he has to pay a penalty that the next time the price will go down, can go down. You set the principles right in the beginning that what should be your pricing model. And the pricing model is nothing very, it is not a rocket science. You can lay out the model, the parameters will change, but the parameters value will change, but the parameters may be fixed. I will show you a model, I will give you a reference model, which you can fix and it can be very, very simple. It doesn't have to be very complex. So you lay out the reference model, on the basis of that reference model, the operators bidding in the auction process knows that when he takes spectrum, he has a competitive advantage to enter the market. That is the reason why he is paying the premium for the spectrum, right? He is paying premium for the spectrum because he is entering the market. And if a next auction happens in future after 1 year or 2 years, if the second player who is entering the market at that particular point of time, he doesn't have the competitive edge because he is entering the market late, right? So if he gets the spectrum at a lower price, it doesn't really matter, right? The player who has entered the market first should not complain. Just like other ingredients in the business, the regulator does not control. The regulator does not control land. The regulator does not control rent. The regulator does not control equipment price. The regulator does not control many things. The labor prices, the salaries of the employees, the regulator does not control. So why the regulator should be controlling the spectrum price and set it in such a way that if an operator has taken spectrum price at a particular value, that no other operator will be able to get the spectrum, the same particular spectrum band at a value less than that. Why? That's the question that you have to ask yourself. Because it does not make any sense. Because it drives the distortive behavior in the market, which has happened today, right? And that's what that's the problem that we are facing today. Now let's go next. Now what about level playing field? Very, very important point, which I was talking really. What is level playing field? Level playing field is nothing but fair opportunity for all. Fair means the opportunity that exists at a particular point of time should be fair. It cannot be biased in favor of a particular player, right? Level playing field does not mean that the price has to be fixed. That is not level playing field, which basically means that if my grandfather had bought a plot at a particular price 50 years back, or maybe 10 years back, or whatever time that you want, I should have the opportunity to get it at the same price. That's not level playing field. That does not work. Right? It's all market determined at that particular point of time. It may go down, it may go up. Everything goes up. It follows the market model. Only thing is the market has to be structured in such a way that the market forces play out and the market is not under any kind of artificial control or distortion. It should be fair, right? So level playing field is fair opportunity for all by ensuring level playing condition for access to resources, not needing to hold parity of price of spectrum, acquiring at different points a different condition, transparency laying out principle of pricing of space. This is very important. Transparent principle should be very clear. Everybody should be able to calculate how the spectrum pricing will change. Very simple. They should know how the spectrum pricing, what model will be followed. That model has to be discussed. Penalizing reckless behavior in the auction, because if anybody wants to pay higher price, he should be penalized right and then. We should not wait for the company to become bankrupt, because if, let's assume that somebody has paid huge amount of price for a particular spectrum, after 5 years his company gets bankrupt. We have seen cases happening in the industry. The competitor, the player, his colleague who paid the similar price in the market, who accumulated huge debt, he may not have gone bankrupt. Then what is the point of his paying so much amount of money? Because that particular person who raised the price in the auction now has gone bankrupt, has created two different problems. One is he has reduced the competitiveness of the market, he has wasted his time, right? He wasted his resources in the market, and he has set the barrier of price of spectrum, right? So he has basically distorted the market. So if we wait for that particular player to get bankrupt, by making the structuring the auction in such a way that the player who bids very, very high price is not penalized at that particular point of time, then we will create a situation where everybody will get impacted, including the consumers, right? Because consumers will not have choice. So therefore, we have to encourage responsible behavior during the bidding of spectrum, and the auction design has to be structured for the weakest player. Now, key issues during all auctions: pricing strategy, mixed market price as valuation. As I described to you, valuation is different, market price is different, both cannot be same. We have always seen this. Pricing model is too simplistic. It threw up index valuation of past auction as reserve price. Before this 2022 auction, right, TRI did a fantastic job. I really congratulate TRI for the changes that they made in the design of pricing, right? Before that, pricing model was index value of past. They came out with ground up valuation, but those ground up valuation was not used. Most of the time, the market prices were set for those circles, even if a fraction of the spectrum got sold. For example, 20 megahertz of spectrum was put up for auction and 2 megahertz got sold. Can you call that a market price? There is no way you can call it a market price. But everywhere, because spectrum was taken, market price was, so-called market price was determined, and therefore you just index the price of spectrum by 10%, 12%, and that became the reserve price. It happened in 2016. It happened in the next auction, 2020, but not in 22. Quite different, right? 22 was a year where really good work was done by TRAI, and they changed this practice, right? Which has resulted in lowering the price of spectrum for the first time. Then mean was used. When you have, we are all, we have studied statistics during our school time, and everybody might have statistics. We understand that statistics means that whenever you do take mean, the data that you are aggregating does not lead to, data does not have, any kind of values which are outliers. The outlier value will skew the mean value. But you will see that there will be always outlier, because what happens was that when you do ground-up valuation using multiple models, some of the models will throw up values which are significantly high or low. And then if there are other models throwing out similar numbers and you are doing aggregation, the model which is throwing up number which is very, very high will skew and distort the value of your reserve price, which happened every time. Even the TRI did not correct this aspect in this particular auction, which I am disappointed to say that. We should have used mean, because that is the way the statistician work. That's the scientific way of working on aggregating multiple models' values. And pricing became a barrier to entry, and pricing left large quantum of spectrum unsold. So here is the pricing model with mean versus median. So, and if you see, this I'll make a little bit of explanation. This is different colored. Every auction has been colored differently. This is 2000, I don't know why. No, this is band, sorry. This is band, 800 band, 900 band, 2100 band, 1800, 2100. So you see, this 22 means that this is number of LSA. And this 14 means the total LSA where the mean was greater than median. So you see 14, 14, can't read it right now from here. This is 12. So you'll see that almost 90% of the places the mean value of reserve price was higher than the median. That's why the pricing become very high. Now if you do here the calculation, you will see that for all LSA, right, where the mean was greater. So this is the green, this is the blue portion, this is total LSA. The blue portion marks that where the mean became higher than the median. So everywhere they took mean, and mean was always higher than the median. So naturally the price will be higher. Right? Similarly, this is basically the unsold spectrum. You can see how much spectrum got unsold in various auctions, right? What is sold and what is offered and what is unsold, right? I'll just quickly run over them because I don't want. And then this basically talks about how this is basically, I don't know whether you can read this, a little busy chart. I'm sorry for that. But the way to read this is that this is a time frame. And this is basically telling you that how the reserve price was set on the time axis. Now here you will see that only a fraction of the spectrum was sold, but still the reserve price was set, right, on the past auction price. Similarly, here also you will find the same thing. Maybe I think around 10% or 12% spectrum was sold, right? Now this is the last slide, which is very important, which I was basically wanting to talk to you about, how to set reserve price. Now, you might have experienced this, that for a particular band, in any circle, for different bands, to different band for any circles, prices were extremely dissimilar. Like, you might have seen that if you take the GDP number of a particular circle or the revenue number of a particular circle, you will find there will be some level of correlation. You run a regression model using statistics, you will find some level of correlation. But do that regression model. Using the spectrum price, you will find no correlation. There is absolutely no correlation between the GDP of a particular circle or the revenue emanating out of that circle with the price that emanated out of the circle. So you should ask a question, how can it be that there is no correlation between the pricing of a particular circle and the GDP of a particular circle or the pricing of the revenue of a particular circle or any other financial metric that you use for the circle, which means that there were distortions during the auction because of the reason which I have already explained. Is it not the responsibility of the regulator to correct those distortions, to iron out those distortions? So how do you iron out those distortions? What you do is that you calculate the valuation of every circle for every band using ground-up valuation models, which you know TRI has been doing ground-up valuation model. But I'm sorry to say that in every auction, every TRI consultation process, I have been personally witnessed on each and every consultation process, starting from 2010 till 2022, not a single player, operator has discussed the model. There has been no discussion on the valuation model on ground, which is the most important thing, which is happening. Nobody has given any input, and I even don't know what TRI valuation model is, right? There is a number which it throws out, which comes out of the valuation model, but I don't know from where, how that valuation model was done. No discussion happening on the valuation model. So we need to first understand the valuation model, which has been used extensively in every consultation, every pricing valuation model has been used. So those valuation model has to be discussed, and you throw up pricing out of those valuation model and aggregate those pricing using the method which I explained, either mean or median, depending upon the kind of data that you have on the type table. And then you come out with a pan-India price. Very simple. You come out with valuation model, then come out with pan-India price. Then what you do is that you take any economic metric. You can either take GDP, or you take revenue, whatever you want to take, or you take mix of everything. And then using the pan-India number, you can scale, we can do a weighted average, or you can put in weights of the pan-India number, and those weights will give you the circle price. So every auction, you can use the auction price as also one of the input, and then you can basically come out with this pan-India. Using the pan-India number, you can come out with the individual circle reserve price. And then after that, you can basically use a scaling factor. As simple as that. Whether you want to use 0.8 or 0.7 or 0.6, whatever. So what happens is that when you lay out this principle, the operators know when they're bidding that, look, this is the principle that will be used in the next round of reserve price calculation. So I need to be careful when I am putting huge money on the table. It is, government will be also in loss, because if the debts are not paid, and they will be almost like, in a position of hijack, right? Because if the government is lending the operator a huge amount of money and the operator does not pay, then what the government will do? He has no other option but to basically keep the company running. But that is not the right economic way of handling any situation. So you handle the situation right in advance, not later. So you handle the situation like this, lay out the model, lay out this principle, everybody is aware, they participate in the bidding process knowing that this is the way the pricing will happen. They will know exactly, it will be fair, transparent, and it will be, everybody will be happy. And then, thank you very much. This was my last slide.
I think Mr. S.T. Abbas has just arrived, the principal advisor from TRI. He would be the right person to kind of give a response to his outpourings, like this valuation is never discussed. What is the yeah? So despite my willingness to disagree on certain points, I cannot do so because he is very well respected at the highest level, not only in DOT but TRI as well. So I think his views will find a kind of, will make a right impact at right place, at right time. So with that, I would request my next speaker, Dr. Puneet Rathod. He would be speaking on a spectrum roadmap for the future sub-gigahertz, mid-band and millimeter. That is how popularly the bands are given a common noun nowadays. Low band, mid band, high band, millimeter band, and all that. So basically, before he starts his discourse, I would like to put forward my point of view here. It's not point of view, it's a piece of information, but that is important. Basically, government is like very much seized of the issue of finding more spectrum in the mid band, because mid band is the part of frequency ranges which are being looked at as the future of the not only 5G, expansion of 5G, but the development of 6G as well. So government is very well aware of the fact that right amount of spectrum and more amount of spectrum has to be found, especially in the mid band. A certain number of committees have been formed, and our dynamic secretary telecom is every day after us taking a feedback, what is happening, how far you have progressed and all that. So we are doing a lot of work, and hopefully we'll be coming up with right kind of recommendations for the government. And now it is of the government to take a final call on those spectrum tranches which are being discussed and which will be recommended to them. So with that, that sets the tone for my next speaker, Mr. Puneet Rathod. The floor is yours, Dr. Saab.
5G India Forum as a organization, we have been an industry-led organization of like-minded companies in India, primarily focused on promoting 3GPP based technologies for IMT and in more than one kind of use cases. So that is what we are. We have been very active in all the national initiatives, discussions, forums, and discussions towards technology. We have been active in the IMT 2020 evaluation. We have been active in the, so 5G India Forum is also a registered independent evaluation group of the ITU-R, and we have been active in multiple WBC committees as well. So this is a brief background about us, and we have been very actively contributing towards most of the ITU-R work. And I think, thank you Gulab Chand ji for that nice introduction about enabling new spectrum or constantly looking for ways to identify new spectrum. And I think one of the things which I may, at least as part of this presentation, talk about is a lot of these inputs were part of our member deliberations within 5G India Forum, and they were also part of our inputs to the national committees which were set up for the 6G and identifying new spectrum towards the roadmap for India. So this is kind of the inputs that we had come up with, deliberated upon, and discussed. And when we look at different kinds of spectrum, all the way from sub-gigahertz to the millimeter wave, they fall into different attributes, covering, like the lower bands are very good in terms of the coverage range, and then as we go higher in the spectrum, purely from the propagation characteristics point of view, the coverage range reduces. But then this also helps in enabling more capacity. So that's more straightforward. But then when we start looking at new technologies and a few of the technology trends that we start looking into, say IMT 2030 or 60, then we start looking at AI-based spectrum access, the availability of the spectrum, the quantum of spectrum that could be potentially available, and then also higher order MIMO, larger antenna configurations. So different spectrums have a relationship to the kind of frequency bands where these are possible. So all kind of spectrum become equally important in making the technology available. And towards this deliberation, one of the things that we started looking at, and this is mainly from the information that was available to the committee from ISRO, and then within 5GIF we were trying to develop tools in visualizing and analyzing what are the different usages of the frequency, which of these frequency bands are current usages, planned usages, what is the what kind of usage is there? Is it space to earth, earth to space? Some of the information is available, some of them is not. And then all of this becomes truly part of our national discussion to enable and lead us towards identifying either a coexistence study or really identifying how to enable this new spectrum for these future bands. And while All of these range is purely 30 gigahertz and above because that was the scope of the discussion. But then this kind of a mechanism or method is not limited just to this 30 gigahertz and above. But then if we try to do this kind of activity for all the bands, it truly becomes an empowering way for us to start and discuss how to enable more of this spectrum. And with the theme of this session, maybe I'll try to present something which was a more bold way from 5G India Forum to really propose something which is more radical, and that was to really think of a more strategic way of prioritizing use cases and technologies. And what it means is that we have examples of, for example, US, where they had a program of 5G Fast, where it was considered a national priority to really consider certain kinds of spectrum to be priority bands or frontier bands for a certain technology and then, or for a certain use case. And to enable that, there were structures created so that either the spectrum could be reharmonized, reassigned, and truly look at it from a clean slate perspective. And when we look at that, this was just a visualization of how you could imagine, say, a sharing or compatibility study. So if we have a candidate spectrum in mind, we could truly look at it like, is it a 6G priority band for India from a strategic point of view? Does it enable our Indian ecosystem, our Indian manufacturers, our Indian use cases, our Indian operators? And if that is the case, if we want to consider that as a strategy band, then there could be incumbents. If those incumbents could be relocated without impacting those incumbents' business cases, then it really helps everybody in the ecosystem. And if that relocation is possible, then those bands can be made available much more easily. If those incumbents cannot be relocated, then we come to the idea of, can we start doing the coexistence studies, compatibility studies, identifying the parameters, and then band segmentation becomes the last resort, because that is where we really identify that this coexistence is not possible at all. And then within our national roadmap, we need to partition the spectrum into parts, saying that certain parts of the spectrum remains with the incumbent, certain parts with the newer use cases or technologies. So this was more from a perspective that how could such a approach, how could one such approach be looked at to create spectrum where there are already existing incumbents, and then start looking at it from a more enabling point of view. And these were a few of the recommendations, and I think it's very good to know that at least one of them, the availability of spectrum for experimental license, is something which is already in place. We have announcements from the government on a lot of the above of the terahertz bands being available for experimental usage, enabling the ecosystem, and identifying the quantum of spectrum for future technologies, both 5G and beyond, like beyond 5G and also going towards 6G. When we look at the quantum of spectrum required in different bands, then we start looking at what could be the right strategy. Are they the candidate strategic bands of interest? And then we start looking at the different models, the parameters considered by the incumbents, and finally establishing forums within our national ecosystem, study groups with representation from the industry experts, and we have that expertise within 5G India Forum from our independent evaluation group activities, from the tools that we are developing, that we would be more than happy to have this India-specific studies, which was also mentioned by multiple speakers in the previous session as well, in the morning before lunch, that once we start having studies which are tailored to our kind of scenarios and situations, then we start looking at what is truly possible, both from creating more greenfield spectrum, and in cases where the incumbents cannot move, then how to enable those coexistence and compatibility. So with this, I would conclude my presentation, and thank you, everyone.
Going for the coexistence studies for finding new spectrum for new application or uses. So I think that would be very valuable for audience. My next speaker is Shri Prakash Murut, Global Head of Spectrum and Regulatory Affairs, Shure, I don't know how to pronounce it, Incorporated. So he will be speaking on spectrum needs of program making and special events. So about this, I wish to inform the audience that this matter in DOT was deliberated more than once basically, but because of the various issues involved into this, we are not able to come out with a final recommendation and conclusion. Because sometimes the spectrum may be locked with some other user. Sometimes it would be the economic issue of how to give away the spectrum, like it should be delicensed, lightly licensed, or it should be heavily priced, and all that kind of considerations bother government from time to time. So setting the tone for his further kind of speech on the subject, I invite Mr. Prakash for his discourse on the subject. Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here in person and happy to see so many familiar faces, having spent 24 years in the mobile industry. I think I've known Bibi. We started at Motorola together more than 24 years ago, and I started in India, started in France. Very happy to be here. So my talk will be a bit different from basically what you've heard this morning and what you're going to hear, I guess, tomorrow. This looks like this seminar is mostly about spectrum for mobile. So I'm going to talk about program making and special events. Some people may wonder what this is about, so I'll cover that a bit later. I also had the privilege to meet with Srimati Revati and then Sri Kumar at the World Radio Conference in 2019 when I was part of a US delegation, and also I was heading the spectrum team for Nokia. So I know the mobile industry very well, and now I'm on the other side trying to make sure that we continue to keep spectrum for some other industries that are also very important. It's not all about mobile. We have a satellite industry, we have program making and special events, we have, I can make a list. I know tomorrow we have a session on 6 gigahertz, Wi-Fi, all of these are very important. So very happy to be here to talk about program making and special events. Okay, so just based on the comments from our previous speaker, so it's pronounced Shu. Shu is an equipment maker. We build wireless mics, and actually on this table, if you look, all the mics here are Shu's mics, and I think the system being used there are so Shu. So Shu has been in existence for 97 years. The government, Prime Minister Modi uses our equipment, famous singers at opening ceremonies whenever President Biden is making a speech, they use our equipment. So it's everywhere. We don't have it like a mobile phone in our pocket, so we don't really pay attention to it. And actually, I never really paid attention to it until I started to work for Shu about 15 months ago. And we really think it's very important for any regulatory body to pay attention to, to this industry. So I'm going to talk about PMSC, what it's about, what band it uses, how much spectrum it needs, because when discussing with regulators, sometimes I've heard them mention, we'll just give you 8 megahertz of spectrum and that should be enough for you. But I have some examples from the World Expo 2020 that took place in Dubai, where we did a scan of the spectrum, and I'm going to share with you how much spectrum we actually use for that expo. And then we're working right now with the Olympic organizing committee for actually the Paris Olympic Games in 2024. And similarly, they are scratching their head to figure out how they can allow wireless mics, wireless cameras, and other equipment for that game. So if India at one point want to host an international event like an Olympic game, or some other major event, you need to make sure that spectrum is available to support PMSC. It's not always about auctioning spectrum, so I'm going to talk a bit about how new innovative approaches are making spectrum available, especially in the US. Dr. Rathod talked about this US FAST program, and you can see the last recourse is band segmentation, meaning auction. First is try to see how you keep the incumbents in the band, share the band with them. If that doesn't work, then you kick them out. And usually it's, at the tune of billions of dollars. I mean, if you followed the auction in the United States where I'm based, the C-band auction generated $81 billion, for the US Treasury. But there are other ways to unlock spectrum that's actually allowing private networks. Companies like Amazon, they don't want to deal with the mobile operators like AT&T, T-Mobile, United States. They are as big as the mobile operators, if not bigger. They want to be able to get access to spectrum so that they can deploy a 5G network in their warehouse if they want. Same with FedEx. Even here at this hotel, why can't Marriott, go buy equipment from Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, get the spectrum from the regulator directly, and then deploy a 5G network here without relying on mobile operators. So I'm just going to touch on this. I'm very eager to hear about what the private networks discussion will be tomorrow. So let me see here. So I thought I'd start with this slide, just to explain what PMSC is about. So this is an article from the Hindu Business Line that's talking about what happened at the Cannes Festival in France. India was the country of honor, and for someone like me who spent 10 years in France, I was very honored to see that. We have a very creative, very vibrant creative industry here, led by Bollywood, the music industry, theaters, you name it. And this is being recognized internationally, like, what happened at the Cannes Festival. And this article even talks about the potential for India to be the content hub for the world, and also that the creative economy can drive the next wave of growth. So what is PMSC? PMSC is basically consists of devices that capture emotions for the creative industry. So wireless mics, the mics we're going to use for the panel discussion later, wireless cameras. Just like the telephone industry, all the PMSC industry, they're going wireless. Wireless means spectrum, just like any communication system. So we need to make sure we have enough spectrum in the right frequency bands to support these different devices. So just a few words about SHOW. So as I mentioned, we've been in existence for 97 years, based in the Chicago area where I'm from. And just recently, we put in one of the biggest wireless PMSC system at the Geo World Center in Mumbai. And if you're interested to learn more about this, we have people in the room from SHOW who can talk about this. So wireless mics, wireless cameras are used everywhere in your monitors. So, you can see all the pictures here. Prime Minister Modi in cricket games, sports game, live music, you name it. This is what I call the traditional audiences. What's new and what's driving even higher demand for content created by wireless mics and wireless cameras and other PMSC devices is actually the content needed for these new platforms. So Netflix, Z, Apple Plus, Amazon Prime, they're investing tens of billions of dollars for content creation. Especially with COVID, everyone was stuck at home, and these companies are investing a lot of money to develop content on their own. So in addition to, us going to the movie, etc., as you all know, you can sit at home. So that's actually driving the demand for this, which in turn, translate into demand for spectrum. Okay, so one question I always get is, what band typically do we use for wireless mics? I'm going to focus mostly on audio PMSC because I'm from SHOW and we build audio equipment. So how much spectrum you need, which bands, etc. So the main band is really the TV UHF band from 470 to 1 gig. You've heard the WRC 19, agenda item 1.5 mentioned several times this morning. This is an agenda item that's going to review the use of a ban for Europe, Middle East, and Africa by mobile applications. So it's very important for us to continue to get access to that ban. The reason why this ban is important is because of the propagation characteristics. Wireless mics usually are used next to the body, so you need a band where you have low absorption effects. And also, the transfer power of wireless mic is typically 50 milliwatt. That's 1/4 of what you use on your cell phone, which is about 200 milliwatts. So you need a band where the waves can actually go far enough, to the receiver. So that's why the TV UHF band is very, very critical. It's not like the mobile application where you have low band, the mid band, the high band, the ultra high band for many purposes. For us, this range 470 to 1 gig is the band that's used worldwide, and we need to get access to it longer term. So how much spectrum do you need? For routine events, this is a conference room with 4 mics, maybe you can have 5, 6 mics. Now imagine a technical conference where you have multiple rooms with 6, 7 mics, and you need to make sure that these mics don't interfere with each other. You need to make sure that they don't generate intermode products that fall into the receivers. So you can easily get up to 40 megahertz routinely. And if you're looking at a soccer match, you may need 100 megahertz. And if you look at major events like an Olympic game or the World Expo, you're looking at 150 megahertz or upwards. I know every time I mention this number, people are like, you must be kidding me. But what we actually did at the Expo 2020 this just scared me. In Dubai, so I'll take a bit longer because I think that's the only talk, but it's not about 5G or mobile, so I think it's important to take maybe an additional 5 minutes. So for the UAE Expo in 2020, where you have many countries present, including India, where we had cultural events every day and people using mics every day, we did a scan of the spectrum used by wireless mics. The vertical lines, white lines represent wireless mics, and the range is 470 to 700 megahertz in UAE. As you can see, most of that range were used by the devices. So that was a big event with many pavilions from many countries, and each pavilion using wireless mics every single day for 6 months. So that's more than 150 to 170 megahertz being used by a wireless mic for such an event. The only part of the band we couldn't use are the vertical blue blocks that were used by TV. So we've been sharing the bands with TV for decades now. We've been good neighbors. We cannot use the blocks that are used by TV. Luckily for us, UAE used most of their TV over satellite, so we had a lot of a spectrum available for us. We didn't have over-the-air TV, so we were able to, to support that event, and UAE was able to host that event. The other example is the Paris Olympic Games. So we're working with organizers there. So in France, the situation is similar in one sense to UAE in that they don't have a mobile, implementation in the band right now. That may come later. But the difference with UAE is that they have a lot of over-the-air TV in Paris. So for them to find spectrum for wireless mics, wireless cameras to support that event, that event will take place at many stadiums. You'll have, news teams from all over the world attending. They cannot find the spectrum in that 470 to 694 megahertz. They actually need to put a disclaimer there that I've copied. If, have a link to the spectrum planning document from the organizers of the Paris Olympic Games. Basically, they said you should use wired mics and wired cameras whenever possible, and your last recourse should be wireless. I don't know to what extent people will follow that, but let's see how it goes. The other thing they did also is they added 2 bands. One is 1240 to 1260 megahertz and 1350 to 1400 megahertz as additional bands to be used by wireless mics at the Paris Olympic Games. So we were lucky because Shu actually builds products in 1240 to 1260 for Japan. So we're able to ship equipment from Japan to Paris. We actually did some testing recently, and we're going to use that band in Paris Olympic Games. The 1350 to 1400 is tricky. We won't make product just for one event. So we're working with a French regulator to make sure that this has become a permanent ban after the Paris Olympic Games, and perhaps a ban pass open across all of Europe, not just in France. So These are two examples of real events happening where it is very important for us to get access to, most of the spectrum in the 470 to 694 megahertz band. Okay, so, very quickly, there was some question about, or some mention of sharing this, previously. It's not always about auctioning spectrum. Obviously, there's a direct, revenue stream for the regulator, but in many countries, including Germany, UK, or US, they're looking at other means to allow other industry to flourish, including for private networks. So BMW in Germany can right now get a license covering 100 megahertz in 3700 to 3800 megahertz for basically 3,000 euros for 10 years. It's actually 31,000 euros for 10 years for 100 megahertz. So that's quite cheap. Again, the main impetus is that these companies are as big as the Deutsche Telekom, and they're like, I don't want to, deal with Deutsche Telekom when I deploy a 5G network at my factory, my BMW Mercedes factory. So there are many examples like this, and I've put some links here. You can click on those. There was a letter that was sent to the FCC signed by many companies in the United States, including Amazon, Shu, and others, talking about these other means to make spectrum available, because not everyone's going to spend millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars on spectrum. And then next week, if for those interested, there's also a virtual conference talking about some of these new approaches. Put the link there so if you're interested to join. Okay, so we've been sharing spectrum with TV, as I mentioned, so using either vacant channel where you don't have any TV operating, like in UAE, or outside the TV service contour, or indoor. For example, indoor here, if you have a TV signal, it probably will be, lower because of penetration of the building, so you can probably use wireless mics here, even if you have TV operating on that channel. One thing I want to mention is, again, that's a reality we need to deal with. So United States auctioned the 600 megahertz in 2017, and the two red blocks actually the ones that were auctioned and used by T-Mobile and others in the United States. What we found is harder and harder for us to support events like the Super Bowl, which is the #1 sports event in the United States. So actually this year in 2022, and for those interested, I can send you the document, we had to get special authorization from the FCC, the regulatory body in the United States, to use actually part of a band that was auctioned to the mobile operators, because we couldn't have enough spectrum below this band to support such an event. And next year is going to be even more tricky for the 2023 Super Bowl. So the pressure from the mobile industry is real. We know what's going on, what happened in the United States, India and other places. What I want to talk about is Europe. This is linked to the Warrior Conference of 2023, where the 470 to 694 megahertz will be reviewed for mobile allocation for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I can tell you that countries like France, especially based on the experience with the Olympic Games, UK, and other major countries in Europe, they are saying even if there's a mobile allocation in that band in Europe, they won't deploy any mobile system in that band until probably 2035. And the main reason being, they need to find a solution for PMSE, and we need to find a solution for broadcasters in that band. So, you see here, there are many publications from the European Commission talking about not deploying mobile in the band until 2030 or later in Europe. UAE may be different because, again, they don't have much TV. So, okay, so just one slide. Another question we get is about 5G. Why not give the spectrum to mobile operators and then they will deploy PMSC? There are two main issues. The first one is technical. Right now, the 5G technology does not meet the requirements we have for the PMSC in terms of latency, etc. We're working on that with Ericsson and other players in the 5G Media Action Group. But more importantly, the business case, correct? So why would Qualcomm build a chipset that satisfies a requirement? Typically, they do something if a mobile operator shows up with a big check. I'm not sure the mobile operators really put, wireless mics as number one priority, in their list of things to do. So that's a reality we need to deal with. And then the other comment is, even if we can solve this problem, Technology evolution cannot completely make up for the lack of spectrum. Same for mobile industry. Every time there's a new generation of system being deployed, they always ask for more spectrum. They never say, I have enough spectrum. Okay, so I guess the message for WPC and others is, I think I'm not going to stand here and say, don't give spectrum to mobile. I spent 24 years doing that, actually lobbying for spectrum for mobile industry, and I like to be consistent. One thing I would say though is that, we need to take into account the needs of the other industries, whether it's the military, whether it's PMSC, whether it's satellite, and talking about the UPMSC in particular, this should be an integral part of the spectrum roadmap for India, not an afterthought, especially if India wants to host any major event in the future. And then we are committed, sure, to help in that process, and that's why we joined IFI, and willing to work with the Indian regulatory body to make sure that we can continue to make sure we get spectrum for PMSC. So thank you. I know I took more time than needed, but that's probably the only session that's not talking about mobile. So thanks.
Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I would request our chair. So you have any last comments to give? Yes, sir.
So despite the shortage of time, it's the call of courtesy only that I thank my co-panelists here. So thank you for your valuable thoughts, and I'm sure that you must have made a lot of effort in preparing your transparencies and giving a presentation to such an august audience present over here. So thank you for all your efforts. I think that will go a long way in kind of assisting the government to take certain policy measures so that the needs of the industry are satisfied. With regard to PSME, so I think the task is it's a big ask basically. Finding 200 or 300 odd amount of spectrum is a big ask for us. So already this mobile and satellite has given us many sleepless nights already. So the task is cut out and it will certainly give us more sleepless nights. So thank you for your thoughts, and I think government is aware of the requirement of the PSM industry, and we are already working on this. So maybe we'll be able to find out some solution. With this, I thank the audience for your patient hearing and kind patience. And I am sure that with my panelists, you might have benefited a lot in your kind of information is added up to your kitty. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much indeed, sir. I would now request Mr. Gulab Chand, the chairperson for this session, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos to our eminent speakers. We present to Shri Parag Kar, Vice President, Government Affairs, India and South Asia, Qualcomm. We present to Dr. Puneet Rathore, 5G India Forum. And to Shri Prakash Murat. And I would request Mr. H.C. Soni, Treasurer IAFI, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to our distinguished chairperson, Mr. Gulab Chand. Thank you very much indeed, sir. Can we request our panel for a group photo? Mr. Soni, kindly join the group photograph. And ladies and gentlemen, with that we close the proceedings of this session. We straight away move to the next session, which is a panel discussion. I would request everybody to kindly remain seated. We'll just take a moment to do up the top table. I would request Dr. Puneet and Mr. Prakash to kindly stay back, as they're also participants for the panel discussion. So, ladies and gentlemen, the panel discussion session is on delivering a spectrum strategy and roadmap for India. And I would now like to invite our distinguished session chair, Ms. M. Revathi. She is the Joint Wireless Advisor and Member-elect Radio Regulatory Board, ITUR. Let's put our hands together to welcome her. And also inviting eminent speakers, Shri S.T. Abbas, Principal Advisor, TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, warm welcome. Shri Vikram Tewatia, DDG COAI, warm welcome to you, sir. And of course, we have on the dais with us Dr. Puneet Rathore and Shri Prakash Murath, who are also part of this panel. So time duration for this panel session is about 40 minutes. I now hand over to Ms. Revathi, our distinguished session chair, to kindly carry forward the proceedings of the panel discussion with her opening remarks. And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, we are ready to take questions from the audience during the panel discussion session. You may kindly raise your hand and identify yourself with your name and the organization. Thank you. And over to ma'am for her opening remarks.
Thank you. If you want to sit in. No, it's okay, I think. I'm visible, I hope. So, a very good afternoon. And let me first say, thank you very much, ITU-APT Foundation, for giving me this opportunity to chair. This only okay? It's okay? Hopefully it's okay. Huh? I think that's better, I'll just go on. But yeah, with all the support, and he was always with me whenever there were meetings. And of course, lot of networking, lot of things. Entire industry was there, and he was always there with the blessings of our earlier former wireless advisors and the government as India's support. And I got elected, and I am here, and it was a proud moment for all of us, because earlier our proud ex-wireless advisors, R.N. Agarwal ji and P.K. Garg Saab, they left a, what you can say, remarkable imprint in the RRB working. That I came to know during my course of interactions, during my electioneering, campaigning and all. The people in the Africa, like somewhere Nigeria and all, they used to recall R.N. Agarwal sir advice and all. So now I have a very big task ahead of me to prove that I am their Sishya and I am up to the mark. So with that, again I convey my sincere thanks and gratitude to Bhatia ji, especially, and ITU-APT Foundation, for along with the industry association, which helped me, which always put lot of positive energy so that I will be there in the RRB. Now with that, coming to the point, I'm happy to see eminent panelists. And of course, I have a now choice to put a questions to all my panelists. Because as a spectrum regulator, we are facing daily so many issues, so many challenges. I hope this panel discussion of 40 minutes will throw some light and will show us some direction. The topic is about future spectrum requirements for 5G, that is in sub-gigahertz, mid-band and millimeter wave band. When I see sub-gigahertz band, what I see is we are quite comfortable. We have almost sufficient spectrum. We have put some spectrum for recent auction also, which was not sold. There might be some reasons, but it will be sold. Come to mid-band, that is the crux of the problem and crux of a challenge. I don't say it's a problem, it's a challenge. We can come up with a solution. Because we have auctioned the spectrum, you all know, 3.3 to 3.6. We have assigned to the operators as well. And there are two types of problems in that band. One is shortage of spectrum, where to get more spectrum for the IMT. Both sides, there are existing players with different demands, different requirements. We have to come out, we have to carve out. The major problem what we are seeing is, even the auctioned spectrum, we are coming up with new regulations, new conditions, maybe from TVRO or from multimeter. So I request my distinguished panelists to throw some light on it, how to come out of this technically. Because we have to do some India-specific coexistence studies. And we are all living in India. Why COI study is different from government study? Government in the sense, let us say ISRO study. Why ISRO study is different from the JCS study? It should not be like that technically. Let us come out with realistic assumptions and come with a technical solution so that it will be easy for the spectrum regulator, spectrum manager to put it. With that, come to the last band, that is millimeter wave band. We have already auctioned, and there are committees constituted in the DOT, come up with some recommendations of higher bands like 37 gigahertz, whatever bands identified in 2000 WRC 19. Again, there are different services like FSS, mobile, satellite, as well as IMT services. Then both need a huge amount of spectrum. Now this is the time whether we should go for hard band segmentation. Because of that bands, you don't need the entire service area. Whether we have to go for entire service area auction or smaller areas. My colleague, Mr. Abbas, is having a lot of tasks ahead of him, and he is very capable in both the satellite and terrestrial. Probably he will throw more light on it. In addition to that, I just want to add something about backhaul spectrum. Let us, because we are giving a lot of access spectrum. What about the pipe? Pipe also we have to think of it. With that note, now I'll request, is there any order? I'll request Mr. Abbas. He's a principal advisor at Troy to give us a talk or presentation. Mr. Abbas.
Foundation, and the tone has been set by Ms. Revati. All the details he has given in the nutshell, and spectrum is very valuable resource, and as we grow in the use cases, the more and more demand of the spectrum will increase, because 5G is going to be having its use cases in almost all the economic verticals. And once those use cases are getting penetrated into the different verticals, the demand for the network, demand for the capacity, and hence the demand for the spectrum will always increase. We may feel that currently the spectrum has been provided and it is sufficient, but with the growing demand, it will not be sufficient in near future itself. So we need more and more spectrum for IMT services. And since the use cases are also differing from one vertical to another vertical, like for precision agriculture, we need wide area coverage for the sensor network, but the capacity may not be required that much high. Whereas for the health sector in robotic surgery, we may require wide capacity with low latency also. So therefore, for catering to different use cases in different verticals, we need different kind of spectrum bands also. Spectrum in different spectrum bands, like sub 1 gigahertz band for wider coverage, mid band for a mix of capacity and coverage, and millimeter and higher bands for high capacity and low latency use cases. So therefore, it is important for the spectrum managers and spectrum regulators to make available the spectrum roadmap for the IMT purpose, which is required for the growing use cases of the 5G and 6G technology. And as told by Revati, we are comfortable with the sub 1 gigahertz band. 600, 700, 800, 900 megahertz bands are already available. Even 500 megahertz band is also available, which is currently partially being used for the broadcasting purpose, but it can also be studied, and I think WPC has already undertaken the study that how to use it efficiently with the broadcasting as well as for IMT. And even the broadcasting is going to be done by the cellular network also through the 5G broadcast. So with the convergence of technologies, it is going to be a converged network giving you the personal communication as well as broadcast communication. So 500 also can be considered for that. In the mid-band, that is really very limited spectrum is available right now, and we can think of expanding the spectrum availability in the mid-band. So ITU has already undertaken studies for WRC23 in 4800 to 4990 megahertz band, and coupled with 6425 to 7125 megahertz band in 6 gigahertz band. But in 6 gigahertz also, there are certain demands from one corner of the stakeholders for Wi-Fi, and one demand is for IMT, and there are certain countries who have gone for the entire 1200 megahertz band as de-licensed, but some other countries, they are considering for splitting it into 500 plus 700 to cater to both the use cases. But in the C band itself, we have to think, WPC can consider that how to go beyond 3670 from 3700 to 3800 also, and how the satellites are placed there and how they can be shifted further upwards. And the services which are currently being provided through these satellites in the C band, how they can be served through the terrestrial fiber network, because that is also possible. The television signals which are currently being uplinked to the satellite, and then it is being downlinked in the C band. So in this era of cloud support and cloud computing, those content can be placed on the cloud and can be fetched through terrestrial network also. So that also can be, study can be done about that. And further in the millimeter wave, we have already made available the spectrum in 26 gigahertz band, and TRAI has received reference from DOT for satellite spectrum also. So considering the 28 gigahertz band in KA band and KU band also. So TRAI is working to come out with a consultation paper on that. And further, ITU identified spectrum bands for IMT like 37 to 43 gigahertz, then 45 to 48, 66 to 71 gigahertz. So all these can be explored for further augmenting the spectrum availability for IMT. But one thing we have to keep in mind that as we are moving upwards for the IMT services in spectrum bands, those spectrums are already either occupied or planned for satellites, because satellites were already there. So we have to always think of the coexistence between the services, satellite and IMT, and we have to conduct studies that how this coexistence and sharing of spectrum between mobile and satellite can be done. Otherwise, fragmentation of spectrum will not lead to the efficient use of spectrum, and we will not harness the desired capacity from those spectrum. So in mobile, there is an exclusive assignment of a spectrum to each operator, but in satellite we can have the sharing of the same spectrum with different user if they are looking towards the different satellites. So there are certain safeguards, certain mitigation techniques with which we can enhance the efficient use of the spectrum in higher bands. And coming to the backhaul, the 5G network and upcoming 6G, they need high capacity backhaul also. TRAI has already received a reference from DOT regarding E band and B band. So this 71 to 76 gigahertz coupled with 81 to 86. So that will be very useful for the backhaul capacity for mobile network. And V band also will be useful for point-to-point links for various applications and uses. So with this, I conclude this thing, and then I'll see the questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abbas. Segmentation, because that will not serve purpose. We should go for most efficient utilization of the spectrum, especially in the higher bands and for microwave access also. As far as C-band is concerned, yes, mid-band, we have to think of options, how to get more spectrum for IMT without compromising the existing services. With that, I'll just move on to next speaker, Mr. Vikram Tivatia. He is a DDG COI and expert. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and it's always a pleasure to be here with all eminent, experts and all the lots of people who are retired and who brought us here where we are today in India. So thank you very much for having invited us from COI at this forum. So very quickly, basically, the panel is about what is the strategy or what is the roadmap. Now, why do you need a strategy and a roadmap? And what is the current state of play? The current strategy emerged from the National Digital Communication Policy 2018. It had some targets, right? So the first thing is to see, have we achieved the target? I mean, we are already 5 years since the communication policy was received. We were supposed to be at 50 Mbps. Where are we? We are at 18 Mbps. So in 22, right, which there is major achievement globally, as India today consumes the highest amount of data per smartphone subscriber. So that is kudos and a pat on the back to all the folks in this room and the telecom sector in India, as well as the policymakers. But what we are here discussing is, what next? What is the roadmap now? So this 18 has to go to at least 50, if not 1 GB. 5G is 1 GB. And we are talking, in all forums, 5G, 1 Gbps and upwards. NDCP is still 50. So whatever we have to do, make 3 times the resources available to provide this to the citizens. So telecom sector, we are talking, internationally about India in G20 being an international leader in digital public goods, right? And India as a national strategy wants to enhance providing the world with more digital public goods. And how these digital public goods going to be delivered to the citizens of the world, not just India, is through digitization. And if you digitized, how do you move the data? You move the data over wireless networks. Therefore, the importance not just of India, but internationally of making more spectrum available. And how does this data move? It moves predominantly on terrestrial networks. We are happy to coexist with all the other users who move the data around, but it's a global fact that this service will be delivered to humanity through wireless mobile terrestrial networks. And wherever a terrestrial network has come, the other networks, whether they are required, many of them were initially designed to cover the uncovered areas, but globally again, wireless terrestrial networks are covering much of the earth, right? Now coming to the various, so that is where, the roadmap and why we need that roadmap is to provide that service to humanity. And for India in particular, the good part is because of Digital India, because of the National Broadband Mission, and very importantly, now we have in every state a state broadband committee. Because so far, the involvement of the state was not as pronounced as the current, dispensation or the government has done. Because ultimately, unless there is a good handshaking because a lot of resources for the digitization or consumption of services or delivery of services happens to be at the local level, municipality as well as states. So that's the good news. Now coming specifically, I'm happy that both Abbasji and Revati madam have indicated, as we are aware, sub 1 gigahertz, very valuable spectrum. But I would really, emphasize that what Parag said, the non-utilization of any spectrum band or any spectrum being picked up in an auction is actually a national economic waste. any spectrum which is available and unused, is a gross domestic waste. So let us reduce this and try and take measures. Predominantly it was the pricing mechanism which Parag spoke of. So there is a major need to review the pricing mechanism and the approach to pricing, because earlier pricing was at 5 gigahertz, 5 megahertz, 10 megahertz. Now you're talking of 400. Right, the bands will continue to increase. So the pricing models, obviously, in a strategy roadmap for spectrum, has to be relooked at right from the roots upwards. Mid-band, very amply, as you're saying, very, very important. For whatever the digitization I was talking about, how it has to get delivered through the mid-band, because it is a good combination of coverage and capacity. So, the trade-off in rolling out the network is coverage and capacity. And the mid-bands, particularly between now and 2030, will be a significant economic, aspect. But the economic value of this band will be substantially, it has great potential to deliver digital services, the mid-band. So in the mid-band, there's also, we had a committee in the millimeter wave bands. The 37 gigahertz committee has made some recommendation. We've given a recommendation. Coexistence is possible in much of the band. I would really caution both, not really caution, but really request both the regulator and the WPC not to have a 50-50 type, isko bhi thoda de do, usko bhi thoda de do type of approach, right? But a balanced economic potential value-based judgment. So that, the constraint resource or the, less spectrum will always be constrained. So whichever band or the amount of spectrum which delivers the highest public good or economic value is a very important part of, the considerations before we arrive at a policy decision. So the mid-band, again, there are various options, but we would strongly urge that, an option to use most of it for the 1200 for IMT, because Wi-Fi still has enough usage. And Wi-Fi, one of the things we very often hear is, Wi-Fi is dependent on FTTH, right? But the consumption is predominantly on the mobile form factor. So and FTTH in India just about 2%. Very low, fixed line broadband is very low, while there is a lot of emphasis on expanding the Wi-Fi. Last, millimeter wave bands, yes, there is a movement, 37 gigahertz. A committee has made some recommendations. We'll await those, and there is a lot of ecosystem yet to develop. A very important part, of course, is what was emphasized over the backhaul. Now, in the roadmap, I think we are already behind time for making E-band available. So the earlier, it has got available, but we see much more potential in the E-band, because the pace at which we will lay out fiber for backhaul will never catch up with the pace at which we are expanding the access network. It will take a while. So it's very important to get the backhaul spectrum both in pricing and policy and allocation terms nicely. So with that, I hand it back to you, madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tiwari-ji. As usual, it's very good and slightly inclined towards terrestrial networks. That's good. So satellite has to be there. It is not competing, it has to complement terrestrial network, and we cannot simply put entire mid-band for Wi-Fi and terrestrial alone, because we have a lot of satellite applications there, satellite users, public broadcasting and all. Anyhow, we have to work together to get more spectrum in the coexist, and it's being the C-band, there are challenges compared to your higher bands. And anyhow, your observations about pricing and all, I think Mr. Abbas is seeing, and I think nobody will go for band segmentation for the higher frequency bands. I think that is not the order of the day now. We have to share the band dynamically. With that, I have been reminded we have only 10 minutes. I think we have to take question answers also. For that, can we directly go with the question answer session? That will be better. Yeah, please. Someone can help them to give the mic. Let's be very precise and not covered in the discussions, so that we will not be wasting everybody else's time, please.
Oh, well, I will respect your dictate. Now, a couple of things. The satellite, what we are talking, that's essential part of the communication, no doubt about it. But again, if you look at the satellite, what the spectrum allocation has been done traditionally for last 60 years, there's a whole microwave spectrum has been allocated to them. Now, terrestrial is trying to enter in that. It's still the protection criteria and other things are based on 1970.
Sir, if you just
Sir, madam, just
permit me, I'll just, you put the question and you
Yeah.
tell
So
which
what-
panel member you are.
Yeah,
So
what
that
I'm
we can
asking Mr. Abbas and also the Vikram, okay, how we are going to take care of, because it has to move with respect to the technology, or the production criteria, what the spectrum they are going to use. Not with the tradition what last 60 years we are trying to do.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, a lot of new studies are also going on to have the new parameters on the PFD limits and all. So we will follow the latest criteria only, in which the terrestrial as well as satellite both can coexist peacefully and there is no interference from each other. We'll follow it. Thank you.
So, very quick, a technical question. Yesterday I read the news that about a couple of kilometers from the IGI airport, there's not going to be any 5G services. Vasant Kunj and Dwarka are primarily going to be affected. Now, what is the technical strategy that is being resolved to overcome this kind of, all that altimeter band that they use, the adjacent bands? So what are the technical resolution that government is looking at to resolve this for temporary, okay, depriving a few communities is still okay, but long term we cannot have this acceptable. And any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will. Unfortunately, after taking over as JW, that letter was signed by me. The first letter. I was not happy
So
to
you are
sign
the right
that.
person.
I was not happy to sign that, but we have to.
Yeah, I understand
So,
limitations.
DOT, I think at least WPC side, we are thoroughly convinced that's not the way of doing things, but see, security and personal safety comes at the helm of the things, and we tried our level best to try to bring down certain restrictions and try to put something on the other side to change the old legacy systems. And we are pushing again to get more, because we also don't want that way sort of a thing. I think Mr. Puneet wanted to add something. We are aware of the issue and it's being discussed at the highest level in the ministry.
Thank you. So maybe I'll make a very different analogy comment and then come to a more technical answer. And one of those things is that the entity that demands protection. So for example, like if I build a house and then I don't want anybody else to look into it, then the periphery which I want to be a no man's land, I should acquire it. Right now, the thing is that I have something and then I'm saying that nobody should be there, but then I will not acquire it. It should be vacant for everyone. So with that, right, now the altimeters are far away at 4.2 to 4.4. The IMT C-band, which is going to happen in India, is very, very far away in the 3.3 to 3.6.
That was my confusion also.
The allocations, although the band which was put up for auction was all the way till 3.67, but still at least it's going to be below 3.6. From a technical point of view, this is very, very far away, even from a frequency domain point of view. One of the things, at least like we would be very happy to really collaborate with WPC in giving technical data, understand the concerns, and I mean these are genuine concerns from a safety of life point of view, but then really looking at what is the true nature of the challenge, acknowledging those challenges and concerns, and then coming up with those technical data so that we can assure that these are not risky operations which are so far away from the band of operation and the desired protection regions. And everywhere in the world, we are like 600 megahertz away, even at the highest point. there are operations which are like 3.8 and so on. So I think it would be.
Sorry for cut shorting that, because we are all aware, I think all of my WPC colleagues can kindly support me, because we have done thorough analysis on this. But once the safety of human being, safety of person, then it will be forced. But one thing, I think, if you can share some more details, you please share with us. You want any specific information, Sachin, so that these people can provide any other countries' altimeter details? Because Airbus 320 or Boeing are not being manufactured in India. The same flights will be somewhere else. Can you share the altimeter characteristics and do some study in India? Then that will be more of useful. You would like to add something? Please kindly give a mic to Mr. Sachin there, so that the industry, you please provide that information.
Yeah, absolutely. But my question is still not answered. Do we see in near future these restrictions being removed and 5G being ubiquitously available to the citizens?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay,
We are
thanks.
working towards that.
Thank you.
We wanted every citizen to be connected with the 5G, with a real 5G.
Can I pose my
Can,
question?
can I just add something? So, I was heavily involved in this issue of altimeters in the United States. As you know, it was the auction of the 3.8 gigahertz band there. And that was an issue that was obviously on the table at some point by the FAA after the auction happened and operators paid $81 billion. So my point is, yeah, I mean, there are studies out there, there's some information out there, and I think, we can learn from what UK Ofcom has done, because UK Ofcom has opened the 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz at lower power, not for high power 5G systems. In the United States, again, the auction took place. So there's information out there. So I'm sure, Sachin or anyone else can reach out to FAA in the United States or FCC and others and get that information if needed. As you said, I mean, Boeing, Airbus, it's the same planes flying, correct? So that information is available. So, and if you need any help, I can also help provide that. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just say a few words? When we talk about mid-bands, I think we focus on 3 gigahertz, 3.5 up to 4.2. But I think there's a new very crucial band which is 4.4 to 5 gigahertz, which is a 3GPP 5G band, which is under agenda item 1.1. I think earlier there was a presentation also. Somehow we need to start focusing on that particular band, because that provides a very valuable almost 600 megahertz mid-band, which is almost as good as 3 gigahertz. The FAA issue separate. I think above 4.4, it should be possible to use almost 600 megahertz for 5G. So I think we should somehow look at that band also. Thank you.
Thank you. All the eminent speakers. What I would just like to add, yes, we have given certain precautionary measures, but the utmost priority here is the safety, aviation safety. Like for attending this conference also, we are using that. We are also using 5G, but nothing is stopping us from doing India-specific studies. And we would welcome if we can do that, India-specific studies. And I also listened to Principal Advisor TRAI, that we want to identify more mid-band spectrum. And there are examples of countries, administrations, large groups, where IMT is there beyond this band, as Bhattacharya also said. So, for the present and to take us into the future, identifying more mid-band spectrum, definitely studies are required, and India-specific studies will give us more confidence. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your speech. 472.
No, he's Prakash. Yeah, go. Yeah.
So my question to you, you were talking about use cases of PMSC and where shared spectrum technology can be used. But DOT is not allowing cognitive radio technology, where spectrum there is not used properly by the operator, the other operator can use it. So can you throw light, madam, is there, whether any chance that DOT will come forward with cognitive radio technology made available to the operators?
Yeah, that would be a question for them, but
My question to you is that...
I'm not from, but from my point of view...
but my question to you is that SPAD spectrum that you are using in abroad, outside India, is it based on cognitive radio technology? If it is so, wireless advisor can give a throw light on it, whether cognitive is going to be given to operators.
So, first of all, define cognitive radio, correct? But just talking about PMSC, so the way it works right now, before we use the spectrum, we basically scan the spectrum and then see where you have, what the spectrum scanner was showing, correct? If you have a free channel or if your TV signal is below a certain level, then you use it. So if you want to, you can call it cognitive PMSC if you want, but that's something we're already doing, and we've been doing for decades now, and I don't think, every time people talk about sub-gigahertz, they talk about broadcast, looks like we were coexisting so well that no one really knew we existed, correct? So, as spectrum gets taken away from us, it's becoming harder and harder for us to continue to perform our useful function every day. So that's just one example. The other example I just mentioned quickly on one of the slides that was talking about sharing. United States, for example, we are sharing spectrum with the US military. You cannot find an entity that's, hardest to deal with than the US military. So they made 150 megahertz available in 3.55 to 3.7 gigahertz. United States, they use that then for radar application. So I'm just giving you an example, and then I'll let them explain when they'll move to that. So other countries are already doing that, and it's enabling other industries, and incumbents need that spectrum. The other example is 3.8 to 4.2 in Europe. UK has made that whole band available while keeping FSS, fixed satellite service, in the band. Whole of Europe now is studying 3.8 to 4.2 for vertical application, because if you have a satellite receiver, correct, and you cannot necessarily deploy a high power, IMT base station because of potential interference, you could still use it maybe for local areas. Again, use it to, in a factory, use it. So those, Europe will most likely make 3.8 to 4.2 gigahertz available on a shared basis with satellite using local licensing. So a lot of this is going on outside. But if you just keep talking about cleaning up spectrum and giving to mobile operators, at least United States and other countries have moved away from that because it's getting harder and harder. It's a fight, obviously, but other countries are moving. It's not just a matter of how much auction bring, but other industry also contribute to the society, even if they don't pay for spectrum. Again, giving example, Amazon, correct? Amazon is so big in the United States and worldwide. If they can put a 5G network covering their warehouse, and that, they're still recruiting a ton of people. So there are other ways of looking at how you can contribute to economy and the culture of country, not just by how much money you bring into through an auction. But let them answer. I cannot talk about how, the plan for India.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Because I have submitted a white paper to Aruna Soundararajan when she was Secretary Devotee at that time on this subject, but I didn't get it. Madam was there at the Secretary.
Noted, sir. You're all over this thing.
Yeah.
So I think we can discuss.
Good afternoon.
Deliberately.
Can I ask one question, please? Yeah, good afternoon, ma'am. I am Dr. Lal Singh. Actually, my question is a little general, like it's a customer specific also. Like what we are doing basically is for the communication for our customers. So one of a very important segment of the customers is the farmers. And farmers are to be, they have to be at the forefront in the sense that they have to, we talk of the farm to fridge kind of supply chain, Whatever is produced in the farm that has to come to the fridge. So whole of supply chain, how will we ensure that he remains connected, And then can we think of some the corridor in the spectrum which is dedicated for the farmers? Because they are very important segment. So can we have a kind of policy framework for that? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good question. 5G has provided that facility to you. The earlier Gs, there was no chance like that. Now you have verticals. you have agriculture. And Minister of Agriculture, I think DOT is continuously working with different verticals, including Minister of Agriculture, how to facilitate the farmers. Like you can join with one of those groups in the DOT. They're actively working to promote use cases, to promote 5G will be fully utilized. Thank you. I think we are within the time, I hope we have completed, and it's very useful and interesting. Any more
Thank
question?
you. Ma'am, Mehul Bhandari. I have heard about the optical fiber penetration, the handset ecosystem, the socio-economic aspects. Now, often the arguments that are given for one particular band, they might not hold for the another band. So, what I'm trying to suggest is that we should be mindful of the arguments that we give for one particular band. It's all relative. The capacity, coverage, it depends with which band we are comparing with. Because the mid-band is a good combination of capacity and coverage when we talk of low band. And it's just a very relative concept. So, for example, the socio-economic aspect comes out with the combination of that spectrum band and the service. There are 41 ITU services.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you specify what is your question?
Yeah, so my question is a comment. Just one line comment that the socio-economic value would come out only with the combination of the spectrum band and the service. So X band with service 1 will give a different socio-economic value, while X band with the service number 2 will give a different socio-economic value. So whatever framework is decided by the regulator and the authority and the DOT, it must capture those elements. Thank you.
Thanks for your question. It is, yeah. I think it's a good discussion, and eminent panelists have thrown light that different bands, how much is the spectrum, how to get it, and how to harness more spectrum from spectrum manager and spectrum regulator with a sufficient price so that everyone in the India will be connected with the provided high broadband, including backhaul. And again, I express my sincere thanks to eminent panelists for sparing their time and giving very useful information. And also, I express my sincere thanks to all the audience for their eminent audience for their patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. I would also request Ms. Revati, our chairperson, to kindly do the honors of presenting mementos to our eminent speakers. We present to Shri S.T. Abbas, Principal Advisor, TRI. Thank you very much indeed, sir. And to Shri Vikram Tevatia, DDG COAI. Thank you very much indeed, ma'am. I would invite Mr. Pavan Garg, Vice Chairman, IFI, to kindly do the honors of presenting a token of gratitude to our session chair, Ms. M. Revati. Thank you, Mr. Garg, for doing the honors. Thank you, ma'am, for wonderfully chairing the panel discussion. May I request for a group photograph? And ladies and gentlemen, with that, we now have a short tea coffee break of 15 minutes, after which we will go ahead with the last session of day 1. At this point, I would also like to inform and request all our participants. We would request you to kindly carry your badges to the carryover event tomorrow, as we do not have a separate registration for tomorrow. So please do not forget to carry your delegate badges for tomorrow's event. Thank you.